Horny movies are back. That has been the resounding headline and public reaction following last weekend's release of Challengers. And it's got some experts thinking this shift could, potentially fix Hollywood's dry spell. And for those who haven't seen the movie, it stars Zendaya, it's about tennis, and just sexual tension spanning decades. I don't want to mess with spoilers, so just know that it's a love triangle about tennis players. And so far, the movie's been received very well by critics and audiences alike, topping the box office this weekend, and some outlets noting that young fans were the ones filling the seats. And while obviously Zendaya was the big pull here, with some noting that young people embracing an overtly sexual movie marks kind of a pivot, right? Because Gen Z, to some degree, has become known as this anti-sex generation, at least when it comes to film and TV, right? Like back in October, there was a study from UCLA that found that nearly half of people aged 13 to 24 found sex scenes unnecessary, and over half wanted to watch media focused on platonic relationships over romance. And all of this coming at a time when film has already kind of become relatively sexless. And with that, for example, you had the New York Times just doing a piece noting that in the 80s and 90s, overt sex in movies, that was the norm. Right? Some of the most famous movies from those decades are known for their either explicit scenes or generally erotic themes. But that also changed in the 2000s when studios wanted to secure PG-13 ratings instead of R ratings to widen audience reach. Right? Also allowed them to play into genres where they could sell merchandise, please censors in China. In fact, leading to one writer finding that films from the decade between 2010 and 2020, they had the least amount of overt sex scenes since the 1960s. But with the recent success of Challengers, you had places going, hey, maybe we're gonna see a big shift here. So there, it's also worth noting before you get the wrong idea about what Challengers is, as critics on NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour explained, it is horny, but not porny. And outlets like Collider are praising it for being a sexy film without a super in-your-face sex scene. But also, sex is at the core of this story. Even the way they play tennis is horny, which makes sense. It plays into the idea that the way people play sports one-on-one, or specifically tennis in this movie, that it is a relationship. Though while this conversation is happening, I do think that it is important to note, it is not a complete outlier. If anything, I think it shows that there is a trend, not that it is starting a trend. But I mean, just in the last year, you've had Sydney Sweeney's Anyone But You, which has some spicy scenes. Saltburn is an unapologetically horny-ass movie. Also, I mean, Poor Things comes to mind. I mean, half of that movie is Emma Stone faking orgasms. Right? And all of this is played out as we've also seen the rise of intimacy coordinators on sets. Right? And all of this is you had Amy Pascal, one of the producers of Challengers, saying, it absolutely feels like the pendulum has swung back toward filmmakers exploring adult relationships and sexuality in their projects. I welcome that. But as far as if we're going to see an overwhelmingly or a significant change in the industry, that remains to be seen. But in the meantime, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts with all this?